Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, September the 19th, 2022. We'll go ahead and start the meeting off by saying that on our agenda tonight we have 3 items. Of course, we always have other in case somebody has something to bring up later. I don't believe we're moving into executive session. There was some talk about moving into executive session, but I don't think we're prepared for that tonight, are we?
No, sir.
Okay. So first item on the agenda is the Grant Park Villas presentation, Zimmerman Properties. I'll turn it over to Mr. Feuerborn.
Thank you, sir. And I will immediately turn it over to Mr. Gress to introduce our guest for this evening.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and Council, appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Joining me this evening is Jeff Beckler, who represents Zimmerman Properties. Some of you may be familiar from a previous presentation here a couple years prior regarding their proposed Grant Park Villas project here within the city. It's roughly a 4-acre piece of land just north of 58 Highway, east of Adam Street, south of the Point Townhomes, just to kind of orient you all. The council would probably most recently be familiar dating back to 2019. In November, the council approved the rezoning of this property from C2 commercial to R3B, which permits the hopefully the future development of a multifamily development project on this site. Tonight, Mr. Beckler's here. Previously, Mr. Beckler's presented on the details of this project and kind of their intent to approach MHDC for some funding for this project. Tonight, Jeff is here to present some of the changes that they've made to this project based on feedback they've gotten from previous applications for this site. The developer purchased this site after their first attempt to obtain the funding for this project. They were not successful, unfortunately, and we've continued to work with them each year to improve the project and resubmit for funding each year. And so this evening, also joining Jeff is Chris Thompson with West Central Missouri Community Action Agency, who is a partner in this project this year. And so at this point, I will turn it over to Jeff and invite Chris to take my place here to run the council through just a brief presentation of some of those changes. I know the ultimate request this evening would be the future consideration of a letter of support for this project, which, if given the direction at this meeting, would appear before the council at a future meeting. And so at this point, I'll step away and pass it over to Jeff and invite Chris up here to the podium.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for having me again. Hopefully 4th time's a charm. This is the 4th time I've been in front of you guys. Still very enthused about it, but as David mentioned, there's a few slight changes from this year's application to from last year's application. One of the big components being West Central being even more involved than what they were previously, and we can touch on that here in just a minute. So thank you all for having me, and at the risk of being redundant, I wanted to keep it short and sweet for you all and just really highlight any of the differences from the previous applications to now. So again, Grant Park Villas, there we go. This is just a little bit of Zimmerman property info, being, it's been 10, 11 months since I've been here. We develop across 17 states. Been involved with the program since its inception. We do have Briar Creek over in Belton and Lakewood Terrace over in Belton, and the Ridgeway Villas at the Legends here in Raymore. Those are part of our portfolio. So very brief, I just wanted to touch on that. So this kind of highlights some of the changes. 3-story apartment buildings, be a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. The last 3 cycles, this has been a 55 and up application. As all of you are aware, there was an application, a 55 and up application that was awarded last year. And we know that group, Mako, good group of guys. So in MHDC's eyes, the chances of them awarding 2 55 and up applications in consecutive years is less than a 1%, and it was highly advised to us to switch the general population of this application. So there'll be no age restriction on this one, and that's why we've gone from 1 and 2 bedroom to 2 and 3 bedroom units. A fitness center, courtyard, picnic area, barbecue, computer center, library. It would be 48 units in total, 24 2s, 24 3s. density is about 12 and a half an acre. Ample parking, more than the city of Raymore is requiring. And here's the most exciting part. The services that so Wilhoit Properties is the property management arm of Zimmerman Properties. The most exciting thing about this year is that West Central Community Action Agency, they're going to 100% own this development. We are purely a development partner with West Central. And not only will West Central own it, but West Central will also manage it. And as everyone knows, they provide tremendous services. And so I wanted to highlight that partnership, but they really are truly the owner of this development. Been working very closely with Chris Richardson and Chris Thompson on how we can make this development and the application really highlight what West Central does. And Chris Richardson and myself and a colleague have worked closely to do that. And I can let Chris touch on, I don't want to misspeak on anything specific that West Central does, so I'll let Chris Thompson touch on that in just a second. Full-time maintenance, obviously full-time property manager, and it should be noted that West Central does have that office, you know, what is it, 30 yards? So, right,
away.
yeah. And I know last year this came up, and I just wanted to highlight it again, that taking safety very seriously. I included this slide last year, and nothing has changed. We still take those issues very, very serious. And all of these residents, you know, I call it true workforce housing. The residents that will live in Grant Park Villas are true working members of Cass County and the city of Raymore. Every resident has to prove income. They have to prove employment. They have to prove a criminal background check, a credit background check. So it's very regulated, and I just wanted to highlight that and make that known again. So there's nothing Section 8 about this property. There's a lot of misconceptions about it, and I just wanted to hopefully briefly squash if there was any questions regarding that. And another exciting component, because we are including, or not including, West Central owning, I've had a lot of conversations with MHDC about making this application stronger. I don't want to turn it in a fifth time. I don't want to take up any more of your all's time. And so discussions with them, and then discussions with Chris Thompson and Chris Richardson and David, we are setting aside 15% of these units for veterans and homeless veterans. So that comes out to roughly eight units of the 48. And those units are specifically held for that population. And what's also great is West Central is not only managing the development, but they're also the lead referral agency. And not to get into the weeds, why that's very important is with West Central being the lead referral and the property manager, if someone comes to West Central and, you know, veteran, whether they be homeless or not, and they need housing, West Central knows about it right away. A lot of times there's a little lack of time between the lead referral agency and the property manager. West Central's, everything's right there. And so those units will be set aside for that population. It's a population that's often forgotten, and West Central and Zimmerman wanted to highlight that to the state agency and really set this development above some of the other Kansas City Metro applications. So definitely a very cool addition to the application. And there's our contact information: Justin Zimmerman with Zimmerman Properties, myself, Chris Richardson with West Central. I'm happy to answer any questions after I'll let Chris kind of highlight West Central's act in this, or role in this, I should say. So thanks again for taking the time, and I can answer questions here in a minute.
Any questions of Jeff?
Sure.
Anyone? Yes, Ms. Forster.
15%, what made you choose that number?
That stipulation is set by the state agency.
That was the minimum they wanted, or is that just the number they wanted?
Correct. You
That's the
have to do at least 15%.
Okay.
Okay. Chris? Oh, wait. Mr.
What's the vetting process for a homeless veteran? How would a homeless veteran come to live there? And are there factors in that individual's background that say, no, this is not the setting for you?
Yeah, so I can speak to that, and I'll just, if it's okay, speak also just more generally about the things that we bring, hopefully, to this project and managing and operating it. There is a full we operate 11 properties in 10 different counties. We're in Jackson County all the way down to Cedar County and Hickory County in terms of properties. Multifamily, 430 some units that we currently operate. Walnut Estates is here in Raymore. That is the property we own and manage. So if you want to get comfortable with us as a manager and owner of a property, drive by Walnut Estates. That is our property. So there would be vetting in terms of what he had mentioned before. There's an application process. Now, I will tell you, in terms of a lot of this is driven by MHDC in terms of what we need to accept in terms of the investment being made here. But I will tell you there is a vetting process. We will look through the background. We will do all the things that we can do and operate in our properties. We have a very large property in Clinton, Missouri, 90-some units down there that we operate. That's a multifamily property. We work very closely with the city of Clinton and other partners to say, make sure we've got good residents that are good community members in their community. So there are details to this in terms of what we're looking at, but we do want to promote veterans. We did have those conversations and appreciate Jeff and the developer saying, let's focus on a population that is not and has not been focused on regularly, and we need to do better by our veterans. So we will be paying particular attention, looking at that, looking at background, making sure that if there is criminal background, there are certain things that certain folks won't be able to have access to the facility based on those regulations provided by MHDC. So we're used to this. We have good experience with that, and we're going to make sure that folks are in there living well as good community residents, subject to whatever regulations MHDC has. The other thing I'll mention about this, we are the workforce development provider for Cass County. We have the Full Employment Council contract to provide what's called the WIOA program, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So we are here and have been here many years. It is very important to us that by virtue of them living on this property, we'll be able to work with folks and think about skilling up to make sure that they are productive in the community and have jobs that can support themselves and their families. We really think we see a movement nationwide to say we need to combine the efforts of housing together with workforce development, together with transportation. We do credit building work. We have a new growth community development corporation that works with folks on credit building and financial literacy. That'll be an important service that we can bring to the residents of this location. We have New Growth Transit. I'll be meeting with the new executive director of KCATA on Wednesday to talk about transportation services here in Cass County, and specifically folks that need these services in workforce. So we're very pleased. DSS just appropriated money to us to be able to, or for transportation services, the first time they've done that in this way, for us to provide our transportation services in our region. So we're real excited about that new program, and that'll be available to these residents too. Every property we have is a serviced enriched property, meaning that we have full wraparound services provision for everybody that's on that property. Again, whether that's workforce, whether there are other issues that may come up. We had food system programs that we operate, that we provide for people that may be homebound, and if there are disabled vets or others, we want to make sure that they have access to food and other services and the transportation. So we take it very seriously that every property is serviced enriched, and that people are supported where they're at, and importantly, that we're making sure they're productive and that they have workforce opportunities. We are now there's a new Cass County Training and Technical Center just up the road here. We are the operator of that facility. We've been been asked by MCC, Belton School District, and the city for their development to operate that facility. It is for Cass County. We'll expect that residents of this location will be doing some training with us. And that we'll make sure that we're working with David and your entire team to make sure if there are employers here, we've got good job prospects that are trained up, skilled up for that kind of work. So wanted to mention those elements of the program that we think are critical. The other thing I want to mention about Zimmerman that we really appreciate, we get requests a lot from developers because we're a community organization and they score on us saying, yeah, we like the project. What we really appreciate about Zimmerman and the folks there is it wasn't a check the box for them. We've been engaged fully with them and really appreciate their understanding about local ownership and West Central being involved in this project. We have a City of Raymore resident that is on our board. So it is important to us that we have local direction, local ownership, local management of this with experience here in Raymore to do this kind of project. So we're really thankful that Zimmerman is here and we have the opportunity to work with them on this project. Thank you.
That answers the second half of my question
Yes.
about your vetting process. Obviously, it's a comprehensive placement. It's
Yes.
not just housing, it includes everything else. Again, what is the typical path for a homeless veteran to come to this? I.e., if our police department stops someone that is homeless and makes contact with them for a mental health issue or for some low-level violation, or the Belton Police Department does, can they bring them over to you and say, hey, this guy is a homeless veteran, he needs a home? Is that the process, or how does that work?
Absolutely part of the process. We run a program, we have a very extensive housing program that includes what we call transition services. In the state of Missouri, there is a continuum of care, and we are a door for anybody. So if the local police department, Cass County Sheriff's Department, if we have a veteran out there, we're somebody they're going to call because it is somebody who is homeless or maybe at risk of it, may not yet be. They will come through and we run a full assessment through that. It's called VI SPDAT, where they come through and we run a full assessment on any concerns or risks related to this person, services that may need beyond just housing. That'll come through that part of West Central. And then from there, it'll get kicked into our multifamily side, what we call housing enrichment, where they'll look at that as this person maybe as a potential tenant here at this location. If they're not, then we also have other resources. We have other places we can refer folks to because of our involvement in the continuum of care statewide. So, yeah.
So placement could be, our police department brings someone to you, they may not be placed here. They may be placed at one of your other facilities if they qualify for placement.
Or another one of our
Someone
partners.
from
Yes.
outside the community may be placed here depending upon
Absolutely.
your assessment.
Absolutely. And what we think about that, and I appreciate the question, is the comprehensiveness of the services we provide is that we have multiple points of access, and we have ways to internally refer and internally assess folks, whether they're coming through as a potential veteran that is homeless or whether it is somebody else, to determine whether this is the right fit or whether we have a partner or maybe that person needs to be in another community with a separate set of resources. He referred to the lead referral agency. Often that takes a long time. We're there. So that referral is going to come directly to us, owning and managing the property, to determine if there's a good fit. And if not, we're then going to handle that to ensure that that person may be placed at a better location somewhere else potentially. But we're going to be able to handle both of those in one location.
Yeah, and I think Chris touched on it too. We find in our portfolio, I can't speak for Chris's, that although a lot of these states will have you have a veteran set aside or a homeless set aside, we find that many of the veterans are just what Chris just said. They're not homeless. Rent's gone up, or a new property manager everything's going up. They're on the verge of, something really negative happening in their life. And so they'll find an affordable workforce unit that's set aside for the veterans without necessarily being homeless.
Yeah.
So,
And we just got a call today. One of our state representatives contacted our office for an elderly woman in another county. She was going to have to, elderly, she was on fixed income. She had an issue with the landlord. The representative contacted the landlord and said, can you help this elderly person? And the way they helped them was to notify them that they were going to be without a home in 30 days. we received that call, and our senior care and our housing units are working to coordinate to ensure that that person will not be without a house. She is not currently homeless. She's at risk. But that's what we're talking about in terms of referrals and systems that we have in place at West Central to ensure we have those good, productive residents here at this location, but to make sure that there aren't gaps that can put pressure on police departments or other folks with somebody who may be homeless or at risk.
So what does the MHDC program require for minimum income requirements for, I mean, that's what the LIHTC project is all about,
Right.
is providing housing that's adjusted for low income.
Right.
So what are some of those variety of sources of income that might qualify someone to live in a facility like
Yeah,
this?
good question. So this development will hit 4 different income bands of Cass County. 30% of Cass County's area median income, 50%, 60%, and 80%. So the 30%, at least some parts around the Springfield area, that 50% is first-time teachers. We see a lot of firemen. We see a lot of municipality workers, the people that refill your drinks at Applebee's. Like, all of that's kind of like a 30, 50, 60, 80% types of positions that hit those income bands. Again, it's true workforce housing, to where I can't speak for Chris, but the ultimate goal is that these residents aren't there very long. You know, I could have been living in a 60% 6 years ago, but the ultimate goal is for them to do what they want to do, either buy a home, move, and then that unit is filled by the next person that's just gotten their first, you know, a manager at Kohl's. You know, those types of positions qualify in these income bands.
Well, I know a couple of years ago when we took a tour of the Ridgeway Villas, they talked about a fairly long waiting list for people to live in that. So that if a typical applicant for a project like that with similar number of facilities available, how long will someone have to wait before one opens up?
On a waiting list like Ridgeway, and then a waiting list like, say you're talking about a 55 and up, like Briar Creek over in Belton, which I think has 95. I mean, you're talking, Chris may answer better, but I mean, at least a year.
Yeah,
It's going to take a while.
Yeah. Another part of this is we have the housing authority, but I will tell you, wait lists for things like this, you're talking, it can be a year.
Yeah.
Minimally in certain programs, depending on the funding source. Unfortunately, by opening this, we're going to see immediate benefit to folks that are struggling on other wait lists to get them housed, critically important. But those wait lists are long. They really are, unfortunately.
I have another question, but I'm going to let Mr. Barber jump in here. Well, I was just going to ask, so going back to the veterans, so is it the same restrictions for income? I mean, they have to have a source of income before they're available to move into that
Right.
facility. And so what is that? Are they on like a federal government disability?
No, it's
Social
not.
Security? I mean, what
Right.
are some of those sources of income?
It is not, they're not subsidized units in the sense of MHDC makes you underwrite those units at 30%. So that range of a 2-bedroom to 3-bedroom right now is $460 to $540 a month. So those 8 set-aside units are, once they are filled, they will be 30% of Cass County AMI. That would be the source of income. Hopefully
That they're required to have available in order to qualify?
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless you start getting into, the homeless, whether they present a voucher or something like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah, and that's where the at-risk, the homeless and the at-risk, we've got MHDC looking to invest or fund in this project, obviously, through the tax credit program. If there are folks that come through as at-risk through the state, MHDC also operates that, funds us to do that program. Each of those will have slightly different requirements on what counts as income based on what grouping they're in. And that's dictated by that funding source to some extent. We set the rates based on those AMIs and expect that there will be income there, and that's the assessment we do to ensure that there is sufficient income and rent to fill that unit. And so that really is a big part. And I think, again, what's exciting about this with the new training center, with workforce development literally being, we just kidded about our office is 30-some steps from this. That's the job center in Cass County. So as he had mentioned, our expectation is regardless of how they're coming through to us, every MHDC program has the idea of housing first mentality. If we're going to assist folks, get them housed, get them safely in a location with a roof over their heads, it's safe and affordable, and then ensure that there's access to additional resources for them to improve their circumstance. That is our approach at West Central. That is why we are the workforce development agency for this county and why we also do housing. It takes both. So we're not going to be in a situation where let's get them in a house. Ooh, we got a place, we've got tenants, we're good. It's serviced and rich. There will be somebody on location to ensure that we're meeting certain targets. There are other resources made available for them, for families to support themselves and hopefully up and out in many respects. So that will be the way we approach this property.
Thanks, Chris. Kevin?
Yeah, just curious, obviously it's a multifamily development, but would the units itself have multifamilies? Would you allow roommates or a single?
Well, I will tell you that, unfortunately, and my apologies, Chris Richardson McQueen, who's up on that list as contact, she's our Housing Enrichment Chief Officer for that program. She's had decades of experience in this. She could tell you the finer details. She had a medical emergency with family, so couldn't be here today, so I'm filling in. But I will tell you, we're terribly strict in ensuring that we don't have situations where you have too many people in that. They need to be direct and close contact family members, spouses. We watch those things. We're required through all of our housing programs to make sure when it comes to income, the right people are in the home and we're considering their income as to whether they should be there. We've kind of have seen it all and done it all with people trying to apply for programs, and next thing you know, we hear that somebody, because we'll be on location, did you know somebody's hanging out there quite a bit? Let's go check on that. Let's make sure that there isn't anybody in the property that's not supposed to be there in accordance with the regulations for any of the programs we're offering, MHDC or otherwise. Only the people that are supposed to legally be on the premises full-time should be there and should be noted on the lease and in the application. And being on site, that helps us monitor that very closely.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
Thank you. According to my calculations, we're looking at 7 units of this type of housing, but the whole project is not this type of a situation. It seems like we're portraying the entire project as that. It's just 7 units, right?
Fair, yeah, the percentages, and as he noted, you know, we're going to have different groupings. We're going to have that 80% AMI for Cass County, not bad. So yes, we do see a lot of this really being for those early in life workers that may have young family. You know, we operate in 9 counties, Cass all the way down to Hickory. What we tend to see a lot of in a lot of our counties is first-time teacher. He had mentioned that, where they need a start. They are working folk, but they need a little bit of a start to get them into the community. So yeah, we're talking about a percentage of this population, but there's another percentage of this population that we expect to be coming in at the 80% AMI, 60% AM. They're going to be working folks.
And that might be my fault. I didn't mean to, I wasn't trying to broad stroke it.
I was just talking, we're
Yeah.
spending
Yeah.
a majority of the presentation on 7 units and 41 units. We're not really talking about a lot.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to
Sure.
maybe focus on the majority of the project.
Yeah.
is
That's fair.
50% is not much of
Right.
the consideration overall.
Fair point, yeah.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the presentation, appreciate the information tonight, appreciate the 4th try at this and keep coming at it. I do like this version of it because you've kind of removed the 55 and older, which seems to be the common version that comes through, and this opens up opportunities for those that may have been priced out because of construction of new things or just the economy, just things happen. So having this option within our community. And then the partnering with West Central is definitely a good program and services, and packaging it together, I think, is an awesome thing for our community. And given that continuum of care, continuum of housing options within our community is also a critical piece, I think, is nice to have with this particular product in our community. So I appreciate staff working with you to get this brought
Thank you.
forward, and at the mayor's consent to have this on the agenda tonight, to have this come forward, because I still think in some of the capacities, and I appreciate the meeting you're going to have next week, or Wednesday, I believe you said, just kind of hearing from things in other communities how this particular segment of housing seems to be lacking, and within our community, having an additional option with this product, I think, helps those who have a need, just don't have anywhere to kind of find something to support that. So I appreciate it. Best of luck.
Thank you.
There's still more to come from through us, but
Yeah.
look forward to seeing more of this product as you move forward in it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone
Appreciate
else?
that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Abdul, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a quick question for my information. What's the name of the large property you said you guys have in Clinton?
Antioch Hills.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry. One last question. The AMI, is it Cass County or Raymore's AMI that you,
Cass County.
Cass County?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, what's the full rental rate for anybody who's paying full rent on those apartments?
So for 30%, we're not charging the max, at least the discussions that my financial person and Chris Richardson have had. But as far as a range, anywhere from $460 of a 2-bedroom up to $960. The 3 bedrooms, anywhere from $540 up to $1,100. And those are preliminary, but they're pretty close.
And how many, if any, of your residents will be paying the full rental price?
We're not going to go above 80% of Cass County's AMI. So none of the units will be at that 100%.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much for coming up tonight. We appreciate it. Good seeing you again.
Yeah,
And
thanks
good
for
luck
having
with
me.
the project.
Yeah, see you next
I think
week.
it is a good project. Okay?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Do
Yes,
we-
sir. As they had indicated, the resolution for council consideration will be in front of you next Monday night,
That would be
the
for the letter of
26th.
support.
For the letter of support.
As similar, okay. Right. That'll work. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, item B, which is a schedule of fees and charges review. I'll call on Mr. Fearborn again.
Thank you, sir. We will be handing out 2 items to you real soon. We're going to be handing out the schedule of fees with items in red that we're recommending should be changed, or that the park board has already voted on to be changed beginning November 1. And we're also going to be, as we had discussed with the council, we talked during my proposed budget meeting with you all about the new recommended water and sewer rates, and Ms. Williams is going to be going into her annual detail on how we get to the cost of service and the comparison with those. This is awful. We were actually going to try to print it bigger, but all of the computers, that's why Ms. Williams was gone for a bit, all the computers in the building are offline, so we couldn't print it to the larger piece of paper, so I apologize. And could I hold your glasses for you, Councilmember Barber? So if you could start with the water and sewer cost of service.
If you noticed my face really red earlier, it's because I went to my computer and nothing was connected, and then they were like, "It's coming up really fast." Anyway, I put in a work order for IT. All right, so first up is the water and sewer rates. That's going to be this packet that I handed out. It kind of has a lot of the information in there that you guys like to see, I think, each year, including like where our water rates are compared to the rest of the cities that surround us. The city follows the cost of service model to determine our water and sewer rates. Annually, we complete a thorough analysis using a water and sewer rate model. In this analysis, it's important that we maintain a fund balance that's adequate to cover our costs. This includes a 20% reserve of our expense in that fund. We track the number of customers that we bill for water and sewer, as well as the consumption that's billed for each water and sewer. First up, I'll talk about water rates. In analyzing our rates, we are assuming a consumption per customer of 65,000 gallons annually. This is taken from the past 5 years of billed consumption, the average of those 5 years. The number of customers anticipated for fiscal year 23 is 8,654. That takes our current, what we're currently billing, because we track that information monthly, and then also with what we anticipate for growth next year. We anticipate paying Kansas City 562,510,000 gallons of water is what we estimate. We'll see a rate increase from Kansas City this year. We haven't had a rate increase for the last couple of years. They held their rates when COVID started. They held their rates the last 2021, and now they're increasing them in 2022. The City of Kansas City completed their water utility cost of service study and indicated that they will change the wholesale customer water rates. The increase is 5%. Due to our estimated increase in the customers, as well as our increase in consumption and the increase in the cost of water for Kansas City, our model indicates an increase in our water rate from $6.46 per 1,000 gallons to $6.54 per 1,000 gallons. It's 8-cent increase. And then if you look in the packet, you can see the letter from Kansas City that they sent to us in February letting us know. And we are under the unrestricted, so our rates are calculated with the unrestricted and then the first and second repump, and then some math. Next up, we'll talk about our sewer rates. For sewer, the average consumption for the past 5 years is 53,058 gallons annually. And our estimate of customers in fiscal year 23 is 8,413. So we do have some water-only customers. That's why those numbers are different. Little Blue Valley Sewer District provided the anticipated rate increase to us that will begin in October. The increase for the city is 5%, is what the Little Blue Valley rate change will be. It's based on the 18-quarter rolling average for the city. In addition, we have 1,950 customers anticipated in the Middle Big Creek District. The rates will increase from $38 per connection to $41 per connection beginning in October. This is an increase of 7.89%. It's still per connection right now. They will eventually be moving to volume billing, but right now it's per connection. So we take that and put it into our water rate model, and it helps calculate the cost of service for the sewer side. The break-even for sewer in the rate model calculation is $8.96 per 1,000 gallons for volume billing method. That's an increase from $8.48 or 48 cents per 1,000 gallons. The winter averaging calculated rate is $9.41 per 1,000 gallons. The combined change with our rates is an increase of 56 cents per 1,000 gallons. So then I took that 56 cents and multiplied it times 5.3, which would be our 5,300 gallon average. So that equates to $297 a month that people would see in that average, which is a little over $35 a year. That concludes my report on water and sewer.
Okay, back to you, Jim.
Thank you, sir. If I could turn the council's attention to this particular page of small print.
I have one eye and I see it really well, guys.
Nobody say a word. Nobody say a word. So as you can see, with this proposal, we would be on 10,000 gallons of usage at 155. You can kind of draw a line because obviously all of the water districts, we're not including what they're paying for sewer out in the districts if they're paying for sewer. So by comparison with all of the other cities, it appears that we are still, even with the increase, going to be lower than everyone except for Lee Summit, and some of those by a considerable amount when you take a look at those. I would also emphasize, as we do each year, it's important to remember that the model that we use is a cost of service model. Twice during the presentation, Ms. Williams did bring up that we use a break-even method. We figure out what our costs are going to be based on that front page and all of those increases that you see. And then we figure out how much revenue we have to do to cover those costs. And that is all that we charge our customers in Raymore. The cost of service method has worked well in each of our years. It accounts for and does allow for, in certain years, for our costs to go down. In given years, the council who have been here for a while know, you've kind of seen these fluctuate up and down over time. As I had said during my proposed budget presentation, the unfortunate fact is this year that all of our utilities are going up considerably compared to years past, and all three of them are going up, 2 at 5% and one almost at 8% for next year. We're seeing that across the board with our utilities. Most of you probably got this flyer in the mail either last Thursday or Friday. After a 92% increase in gas, next year they're actually applying, Spire is applying for a 10.29% increase again in back-to-back years. So we're seeing it across the board with everything that we're being charged, both at the homeowners level and at the city level for these utilities. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thanks, Jim. Any questions of staff on that? Yes, Mr. Barber.
If I'm looking at this correctly, which I might not be because it's so small, but it looks like that we are cheaper than Lee Summit at the 5,000 gallon mark, unless that's an error. We're a little bit cheaper than Lee Summit at 5,000, not at 10,000, but 5,000.
That's correct, sir.
Anyone else have any input or questions, comments? Okay, so I did have a question about infrastructure. So how do we build in infrastructure for these particular utilities if it's a cost of service collection?
In the middle of the page, on page 1, the final heavy bullet, you will see the 3R contribution remains at $600,000. That's for overall replacement of the existing infrastructure, and then new infrastructure that we have to address comes out of the water and sewer connection fee funds, which are both very healthy. The $600,000 actually goes into the enterprise capital maintenance fund and replacement fund, and it is also a very healthy fund with the $600,000 contribution each.
And where does that fund come from? Does it come from the billing
Yeah, well,
processes?
yeah, this
So
is included.
That's
as
for the
part of cost,
overall
right.
cost of service, okay.
Yeah, we build this in
Okay.
because we know there's going to be maintenance that's going to be necessary each year.
Okay. Did you have something, Jay?
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Fearborn, we're cheaper in water and sewer rates than Belton, Harrisonville, Peculiar, Grandview, Pleasant Hill, Lee Summit at the 5,000 gallon mark, all the water districts. Is it safe to assume that they do not use a cost of service model for their customers? Are we the only ones that do that?
I can speak to 3 of the cities, and I can tell you that they do not use a cost of service model.
That's what I thought. Thank you, sir.
The cost of our water and sewer is the best kept secret in Cass County.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you for that, Lisa. Appreciate you.
Your Honor.
And we'll move on to, oh, you got something else on that?
So the second sheet of really tiny print that we handed out to you
Ah, okay.
is the schedule of fees. And We had asked, you'll see that there are 3 primary areas that are addressed within this. Some miscellaneous utility fees and our excise tax fee. Then the park board has already voted and approved increases in some of the park rental fees that are on the schedule. And then and those are closer to the back end of the schedule. And then we had Development Services do a comprehensive review because it's been many, many years since we looked at the fees that are associated with fees and permits out of Development Services, and you see some a few recommended changes in that area as well. One of the outliers to this is always the excise tax that we are going to be charging, and I'm going to have Ms. Williams talk to that briefly about what the Excise Tax Committee is recommending to the City Council for the increase there.
The License Tax Review Committee met back in July, on July 20th. Each year when we meet, we go through the financials and stuff and look at the license tax or the excise tax, and we recommend adjusting that by the construction cost index. And as you guys know, a lot of the costs have gone up considerably. We take that and we take the prior January to the current January to see that change. This year, that change is 7.99%. So the Excise Tax Committee does recommend that we increase the residential and the non-residential rate by that 7.99% for the construction cost index. Those are indicated there, but it's taking the residential from 2,179 to 2,353, and then the non-residential from 582 to 629. And that concludes my report on that.
Okay. Anything additional, Jim?
Just one item. The council will remember that at your last regular meeting last week, we did ask you all to continue the public hearing that is associated with the entire schedule of fees,
right,
so that we could make these presentations tonight. We thought that there was going to be one additional change that had jumped up on us and grabbed us at the very last minute, and I'm going to have Mr. Zur address that. It concerned what you see in yellow on this page, which is the business license and the home-based business license. Mr. Zur.
Thank you, Mr. Beerborn. Most recently, the Missouri legislature passed 71.990, which is a new statutory provision regarding political subdivisions and their ability to regulate home-based businesses or use of residential dwellings for home-based business. Currently, we have a business license fee of $100, and beneath that, you have an option for a business license or a home occupation for $25. It was an either-or in our world. For how we applied that. Many of the cities out there on investigation, it appears, including Jefferson City, Missouri, you were required to obtain a business license, an occupation license, and in addition to that, you also had to purchase a home-based occupation license. So it was an additional ding for anyone who was interested in operating a home-based business. 71.990 of the revised statutes of Missouri now prohibits the city from being able to apply a home-based business occupation license specific. So what will end up happening is your business license for home occupation at $25 is going to end up going away, and it will all be lumped into the business license fee moving forward. So everyone's going to pay the $100. No one has to pay double. They didn't have to pay double before here in the city of Raymore, but in a number of the municipalities around the state, I found that they had the additional licensure requirements for home-based. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, and I do have a copy of 71.990 if anyone's interested in reading it.
Mr. Townsend.
Would that change, lose the ability to identify home-based businesses, or will we still be able to aggregate those numbers?
So interestingly enough, as part of their changes, they also talked about no impact home-based businesses. We are not able to do anything with regard to a no-impact home-based business. That was going to be, you've got a consulting organization within your home. I don't view that as construction companies that are operating from a home, because those I view as being operating outside the business or outside the home itself. No impact. You're still going to have impact when it comes time for perhaps beauticians. You're going to have impact when it comes time for home-based daycare facilities where you're going to have traffic increases. But 71.990 does go into a pretty significant detail as to what qualifies for a no-impact home-based business. We will not be able to do anything to impact upon them. Now, when we get complaints from a neighboring property owner about how the home-based business is operating, in our view, that becomes an impact-based home-based business. If we're drawing enough attention to do that. Now, and also finally, if the homes associations within your subdivision have specific regulations regarding home-based occupations, those can still be restrictive. It's just something that the city can't do.
Did you have something to add to that?
Thank you. Ms. Hill was at MML this past week, and the sponsor of the original bill that this was attached to at the very, very last minute has already indicated that it was a mistake, and they're going to try to fix the mistake next year. That always goes so well down at the state legislature. But their goal had nothing to do with the licensing component of this. What they were trying to do was, and this is a little bit more ominous, actually restrict our ability to regulate home-based businesses. And the example that came up quite often was if somebody wants to open up a garage in their garage, we have no ability to regulate a commercial garage operating out of somebody's garage. Now, HOAs could probably still do that, but the city itself will not be able to regulate those.
Now, how does that relate to the impact that he was talking about, though, that Mr.
If
Sewell
somebody
said?
calls, go ahead.
So there is language, basically the provisions for a no-impact business is total number of employees and clients on site at one time does not exceed the occupancy limit for the residential dwelling. Activities of the business are limited to the sale of lawful goods and services, so there's no manufacturing that's allowed in it. May involve having more than one client at the property at any one time, does not cause a substantial increase in traffic through the residential area, does not violate any parking regulations, and it occurs entirely inside the residential dwelling or in the yard of the residential dwelling, and it's not visible from the street, and it does not violate any narrowly tailored regulation established for public health, safety, and welfare. So we can still regulate things with regard to public health, safety, and welfare. We can still require a home-based business to register with the city and to obtain that occupational license, and we can do that on the basis of ensuring that that business activity is compliant with state and federal law as it relates to payment of applicable taxes.
Or Judge Nigro?
Yes, sir. The one that maybe has the most concern, and several of the council members have come to me at one time or another on various individuals operating a business, is that we cannot regulate hours of operation
Unless,
somebody gets bothered.
but the.
And then it becomes a
Right, those that-
impact-based business as
Exactly.
opposed to a non-impact.
Yeah. Mr. Burt?
What about businesses that have multiple vehicles or trailers parked in the middle of the road all the time? Would that be?
That's going to be an impact, and it's also probably going to be a violation of most of your homeowners association declarations out there, which reference commercial vehicle parking. Here, that parking would be a no-impact home-based business cannot violate any parking regulations established by the political subdivision. And they can't substantially increase the traffic through the residential area. So if they're causing a danger by parking all of those on the street or otherwise, if they're parking in the driveway, I'm not so sure we can say much.
I just asked because there's a couple of trailers covered with hundreds of pounds of dirt blocking. One's been sitting in Johnson Parkway a lot, and the other one's closer to my house. But anyway,
Anyone else have any questions, comments?
the entire schedule of fees. Interestingly, there's only one of all of these fees that we actually have to have a public hearing for, and that is the sewer fee. But it's always kind of nice to be able to say that we bring the entire schedule of fees to you all and allow for public input just in general.
Sure.
So that will be back before you from the continued item next Monday night.
Okay. Sir. Yep. Yeah, Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had one quick question. It may not come as a surprise that I was looking at the alcohol beverages permit fees. A constituent and a business owner in town had mentioned to me that just in conversation, the cost of doing business on getting all the licensure required for serving alcoholic beverages. And I see some of these, as you go down the list, the beer and wine by drink, $75 on Sunday. When you get down to the third and fourth, fifth line, they go up quite a bit. And I realize it's, because beer, wine, and spirits, the spirits are added to that. But $450, is that, I don't know how other communities charge or what they charge. Is that in line with what other communities charge?
You can charge up to 1.5 times what statutory rate is, and we do that,
We charge as much as we can,
as do most all of the surrounding communities.
but we could charge less if we wanted to.
You could essentially charge less than you wanted to under the statutory fee.
I'm just floating a balloon out there for us to look at, so it seems like a lot. Do we spend a lot of man-hours maintaining these? And I mean, for the extra money, is there justification? I mean,
We spend more time on those than others. We have a lot of, those businesses are in the city clerk's office 2 and 3 times to get all of their licensing requirements and insurance requirements. A lot of interactions with the state. But again, as Mr. Zerd indicated, these are not uncommon fees just to Raymore.
I've never had a merchant mention this to me until recently, and I've only had one merchant mention it, and I thought I would say something since we're here, so, thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, Ms. Forster.
This might not be a question we can answer right now, but when I was glancing at the Centerview, did they give an explanation on why it jumped so much? Some of these are $100 more. Just the cost?
We're
or-
not making money on Centerview.
Okay.
And as the council will remember, I talked to you all about, they have been given a 3-year window to bring their charges into line so that they're starting to make up more for, again, this year, we're recommending to the council that there be over $100,000 in transfer into the park fund. They've got to start figuring out a way to at least get to 85% cost of service.
And I know we get in the report, we see like what's happened there, but is there a way to get like a year report of this many people did weddings, this many people booked from other cities, just to get an idea of better kind of advertising to maybe see who's booking it? And I don't know, instead of just raising the fee, if that's going to help, or if it's vacant, or if it's always being
Well, one of the things that I spoke with the council about is getting an events coordinator.
Yeah.
And they've got to figure out a way to pay for an events coordinator so that the council isn't subsidizing that position for more than 3 years when we finally present it to you all. And right now, they're getting those costs together, because it's one thing to pay the events coordinator, but you also have to pay the events coordinator to go out to the shows. And those can be pretty expensive, as I am finding out, things I never thought I'd have to learn about.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Next step? Let's go to the,
We'll be bringing this to you on Monday night as well, sir, and asking that it be brought back up.
Ms. Abdullah.
Sorry, I'm a little slow tonight. Catching up, just lots to think about. First, I just want to say one of the great things about seeing this is we can always listen to staff and hear that any changes have been well thought out. They're not just random for the most part. But I would be curious, like Tabitha said, to not only, it sounds like with the parks rates, especially for Centerview, they're looking at what does it cost for us to have this event? How can we make a little money here, which is the point of having that building. That's why we built it, to serve a need in the community, but also to support our parks. But I hope they're also looking at how that compares with other facilities so that our prices will remain competitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we had found out that we were falling behind when we were doing the events coordinator survey, and we haven't changed the prices at Centerview since it opened. We were a little bit behind. We needed to get to a catch-up mode where we were right in the middle of those particular organizations, but we can definitely get you an annual report. I would also remind the council, as you all are aware, these have actually already been approved. This particular component's more informational for you all because these are up to the park board to approve there. We'll give you that extensive report that they all got as well. Mr. Mustine has a bad habit of deserting me when prices are being, he's at conference this week with his staff.
Yes, Mr. Barber.
I just want to make a comment, and I know we started several years back putting the comparison of the water and sewer rates, and I appreciate that, and that's the one document I'll take a picture and put it on my phone, and about 3 or 4 times a year I'll have to text that to somebody that complains, and it's interesting when I do that, they don't complain, they don't text back and say, I wish I lived in Belton or anywhere else with their rates, so thanks for putting that together again.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to the final item, which is, again, to bring up the 2023 budget. And Mr. Fearborn and I had talked, and I'd asked him to kind of summarize for us some of the items that he had proposed previously. And I think we have a couple of new minuscule items in there for information for the council. I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. As the council will remember, for the available fund balance, which I emphasize each time for one-time items or items that are on a one-time plan, I had presented to the council but did not ask for any feedback, the possibility of transferring $1 million of that available fund balance to the restricted revenue funds to be used for a 5-year program with $200,000 being transferred from the restricted revenue fund into the transportation fund for streets and curbs, matched by $200,000 out of the capital sales tax fund into the transportation fund for streets and curbs, and $100,000 transferred from the excise tax fund into the transportation fund, again, for streets and curbs. In addition, using the capital sales tax fund 45, a $150,000 transfer in each of the next 5 years for a total commitment of $750,000 to the park sales tax fund for trails and trails maintenance. Had presented that to you all with the proposed budget and was just looking if the council would like us or give the thumbs up, at least, or nods, that be included for you all within the motion. As you'll remember, the motion on the budget, which comes at the first regular meeting of October, is always the proposed budget that you all have seen, which has now been published, and the notice of the public hearing is in place. But at that meeting, it is always, the budget is proposed by the city manager with the following amendments. Would you all like that to be, this program to be an amendment to that budget? Just looking for.
Looks like we're getting consensus there.
Perfect. The second item that I would like to bring up to you all is several years in a row, there's been some discussion about the Rec Park Trail. The Rec Park Trail is incredibly expensive to redo. It continues to get more expensive. However, Mr. Mustine has brought to my attention that there are 2 areas of the Rec Park Trail that continue to go underwater. I kind of touched on this with you all as well. The sheet that's being handed out right now is for the complete repair of those 2 areas, which are in the southwest corner of the trail next to the south parking lot, and actually kind of south parking lot is a part of all of this, $23,468 to correct that problem. I would actually ask the council if that could also be an amendment and look for thumbs up. We would actually put it on at $30,000 to get those two areas out from underwater. Pardon the pun. Excuse me, sir?
Is this a patch or a permanent fix?
No, this is a permanent fix. There is actually a drainage culvert problem at these two areas.
So both areas on the south side by the parking lot, and then as you go around the corner, that area?
Exactly.
I think you got a consensus there too, so be included in that.
The last item that we'd like to bring up, and it's on the calendar for this particular meeting every single year by council resolution, sir, if you would, is council and mayor pay. Before we get to the new one, and if the council would like to discuss council and mayor pay, that is on each year for this particular meeting. If you want to bring it up as it relates to next year's budget.
There's no interest, we'll move along.
I have interest.
Oh, you do? Okay. Joel?
I still think that the mayor's position, I think council pay is acceptable in the current time and surrounding communities. I think the mayor's position is underpaid, especially for the size of our city, the demands set upon the mayor, and the continuing growing demands that are going to come forward. I believe that the mayor's pay should go from $900 a month to $1,200 a month.
It's actually 1,000.
It's 1,000?
It's 1,000, I think.
1,200 still, sir.
And of course, by charter and code, that amount increases only at the next election, which would be in 2 years. Would you like to?
April 2025?
Yeah.
Wouldn't affect this budget.
Right.
It's just an item that's, the charter requires us to bring up once a year. If there's no real consensus on that, we'll kind of move along.
How would that affect, like, I would be curious as to if that did happen, like, what would that do with the budget? How would that affect it going forward? Like, is it just where we say, yeah, let's do it, or is it just where it's brought up for discussion? That's what we're asking, if we want to look into it deeper.
But it would have to be passed,
Sure.
voted upon.
If I understood the comment correctly, we'd have to vote on it, and then the budget would be budgeted for until be budgeted, but it wouldn't go into effect until the 2025 term.
Correct.
So it'll be budgeted in the
It would have,
24, 25.
it would have zero, if it was passed, it would have zero impact on next year's
Couple
budget.
of years.
2 years.
Yeah. And then only half the budget year for 25. Yeah. Mr. Doublewood?
I would recommend we wait on it, because in 3 years, we may think 1,200 isn't suitable anymore. So that'd be my recommendation, rather than looking at it now when it's not in effect for 3 years. Let's look at it when it's really going to impact that year's budget.
I think that, I'm not advocating for myself or anyone for that position, but I think the deal is pull it out of the political realm, because then becomes a football if it is prior to that election year. And that's why, just kind of the prior planning kind of takes that out of the realm of any arguments. Mr. Barber?
Yeah, and I think we know that that position is underpaid. And like Mr. Holman commented, the responsibilities are growing in that position. If we do a little bit, the old saying, you can't eat an elephant in one bite, you can eat it in many bites. If we take a little bit, we could get it up to the point by the time we're there, we don't have to make this big jump for the mayor's salary. So a little bit at a time, because it takes quite a bit of time. You're in here a lot more than we are, for sure. So, and it's growing.
Well, it may be a choice that I make to do that too. It's not necessarily who the future mayor might be or commit to. So, it's.
$200 a month is a modest increase. Annual cost is $2,400. Current misery index at about 12%, sir.
Yes, sir.
Inflation rate somewhere around 9%.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a reasonable move at this time.
And again, it does not have to be in conjunction, it will not impact next year's budget.
Right.
So if the council would like to see this as a
A separate ordinance.
separate ordinance after the beginning of the fiscal year for your discussion at that time, we can always do that. And it could be considered separate and apart from the whole budget discussion on its own merits.
That seems reasonable to me.
I'm just looking for consensus.
I know,
To make sure, we're
very
agreeing
uncomfortable.
to wait and talk about it later. Is that kind of what you just said?
You're agreeing to put it on as I'm asking if you would like to see it as an ordinance after the beginning of the fiscal year for discussion.
Yes. Yes.
I think there's enough consensus
Okay.
to
Very good.
make it a topic. Anything else?
I'll have one item if the council has no other, sir.
Okay. Then we'll go to the agenda under other. We've gone through the first three items and an additional. And anybody have anything they'd like to bring up this evening under other? Mr. Holman?
Just a reminder that I will be absent for the meeting next Monday night. I'll be in Albuquerque during the entire week with my employment.
Okay. All right, thank you. If there's nothing else, you have something?
Thank you, sir. Just wanted to alert to the council to the fact that I will be having, hopefully, the last action on this leg of mine. I will be in surgery on Wednesday. Surgery is scheduled for 10:30. I don't know what that actually means. With any luck, I will be released same day, and in the interim, Mr. Murdoch will be in charge. I'll be sending out the official notification to the council. If I can get back Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to try to get back Wednesday afternoon.
Who will be encouraged to stay home Wednesday afternoon?
Mr. Spearborn doesn't agree with that, but
We might. Demanding
I seem to recall this similar conversation was needed.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
that concludes staff reports this evening.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you all.